I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, a guy I think it's just perfect for the times. He's an expert in finance. He's an expert in business and financial cycles, geopolitical cycles. He has the economic confidence models. He has fantastic computers that are unlike anybody else's. And his computers made some wild predictions. When we get into that, it's Martin Armstrong of Armstrong Economics. Martin Armstrong, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
It's always nice to be with you.
Uh, Martin, I've been calling this the biggest election fraud in the history of the free world. And in the pre interview, you said, our computers predicted it. Would you please explain?
Well, our computer's been ever since really from it picked the peak in Western government, and that was 2015.75. Then Trump won in 16, Brexit won. Even Nigel Farage came to our conference in Rome, and he said, we were the only ones that even forecast that Brexit would win. So it's the computer doesn't ask my opinion or anybody else's. It just goes on the numbers from the economic data, and it's never been wrong. And it said even all right. Besides 16 on those elections, then for this one, it said that it would be the most corrupt election in American history, and I think I published that out like at least 2 years ago. But people have to understand this isn't my opinion. Uh, this has gone far beyond anything I would have anticipated. Every election you had dead people voting. That's pretty standard. That's not something new. And perhaps in our wills, we should put a clause in there if we're going to continue to vote after we're dead, who it will be for. But this is just, it's off the charts. This is the left, and they're so desperate to take over the United States. And I can tell you without any, nonsense. I was asked if I would be interested in helping redesigning the world economy again. And I went down to Washington in 1985. They invited 35 of us when they were forming the G5. And the way it really works is they pretend to listen to experts. And you get there and it's like, gee, how do we save the world? Oh, very sorry, your 15 minutes is up. Next. Then they stand up and say what they wanted to do to begin with.
Huh.
And it had nothing to do with what anybody even testified about. And it left a bad taste in my mouth. Even when I went over to Australia, I think it was around 86, they did an article saying I was Reagan's top economic advisor. I created trickle-down economics, all this stuff, without even calling me. And I called the journalist. I said, it's very nice that I warrant a full-page article. I said, but what you're saying is not true. If I'm a presidential advisor to Reagan, I think 1,000 other people are too. Just because I was called doesn't mean they listen. And I said, I didn't do trickle-down economics. That was Art Laffer. And they don't publish any retractions. But then I went to a cocktail party. The guy accused me of being the economic advisor in the White House. I said, no, I'm sorry. I didn't work in the White House. And then he called me a liar. He says, oh, you just don't admit that you worked for Reagan. I was like, you people are just too much. Whatever you read, you just think, that's gospel. I said, it's just nonsense. But this is what we're facing. And it's fake news. It's been around for a very long time.
It is. Let's go back to the election briefly, and then I want to get into fake news because it's off the chart too, and That's something I know some about because I worked at 5 TV stations and 2 networks. But are they going to be able? It looks like Trump is tweeting out. And we talked about this in a pre-interview that he talked about that Dominion, deleted 2.7 million of his votes and added votes to Biden, and then you got whistleblowers coming up from the Dominion voting systems coming out saying, "Oh yeah, you can manipulate it." Whistleblowers saying it was manipulated. Tech eye people saying it's an unbelievable. What do you suppose the level of cheating was if it's off the charts in the greatest? What was it you said? The greatest election, most corrupt election in history. What do you suppose the cheating, the numbers were? Is it in the hundreds of thousands or millions? It looks like Trump says millions.
Millions, definitely millions.
And more than 2 or 3 million?
Perhaps even up to 38 million. This is
wow.
Some of the information I'm getting from behind the curtain.
Up to 38 million fraudulent votes for Biden.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's crazy. I've got info from people that were in Canada saying that even they got ballots. Why? They're not American citizens. It's just crazy. Other ones, they're telling me that their 14-year-old daughter got a ballot. It's just beyond description. I mean, the level of corruption in this, and it's all to basically take over the government. And you heard, Pelosi coming out saying that, oh, we now have a mandate to change the economy. I mean, even with all this stealing of votes, the popular vote that they could claim is only 50.5%. I mean, that's lower than anybody in recent history. I mean, when you didn't have a third party involved. I think worst case for Obama was 51.5. So, I mean, we're not, there's only been 3 presidents that ever had 60% or more. And that was FDR in 1936 and only one time. Johnson after Kennedy was assassinated, which was more of a sympathy vote. And Richard Nixon when he said he was going to bring everybody home from Vietnam. Other than that, if you look at all the presidential elections, you can Google them, you'll see most of them are anywhere between generally 51.5 on the low end to maybe 54, 55% on the high end. These are not mandates. I personally think that we need a constitutional amendment that says that the economic system cannot be changed without a 2/3 majority vote, period. This is ridiculous. I mean, I testified before Congress, I think it was in 96, the House Ways and Means Committee, and they were asking me why no American company got any of the contracts to do the Yellow River Dam in China. And I explained to them, I said, look, I mean, we tax worldwide income. Germany does not. So a German company going in bidding on the same project is already 40% cheaper. And they just look at you with their mouth open. Oh, wow, really? Yes, stop taxing worldwide income and then maybe we do better. But what happens is that in order to be competitive, companies have to move offshore. And, they go, oh, it's tax avoidance. No, it's being competitive on an international scale. It's absolutely insane what they do. And I mean, this environment is very interesting. I mean, we've got offices around the world. Fortunately, our products can be downloaded. If we were in a physical type product, we'd be out of business, period. Because all my staff, I got staff in London, Germany, Abu Dhabi, India, Singapore, Thailand, China. Nobody can even come to our conference. I got people stranded around the world.
And I want to just briefly touch this election, and we'll move off it because I want to talk about COVID and lockdowns and all that stuff, which Biden is now ballyhooing, and he wasn't doing that during the election. But Do you think Trump can pull this off? He's out saying, "Don't bet against me," and he's out tweeting that, boom, I've got 2.7 million votes just taken away from me, and that's just the beginning. And then there are the paper ballot fraud and everything else, and the sharpies and the dead people and blah blah blah. Do you think Trump can pull off a win?
Legally, yes. I think the Supreme Court can step in here and actually take it over. I think that would be good for the country. I mean, it would be good for them because you already have the Democrats saying they're going to completely change the structure of the United States. I mean, they want to pack the court. They want to actually strip the Supreme Court of any jurisdiction to rule on certain things that they legislation they pass. I mean, we have a tripartite government. It's supposed to be, the legislative, the judicial, and the executive, and they simply want to eliminate, the Supreme Court. Period. I mean, this is outrageous what they're doing. I mean, that's why I've said, look, this is not a simple election between Republican and Democrat. This is something much more sinister, and the exact thing that they're doing. Just look to Europe. You do have Biden, advisor on COVID. Oh, we're going to lock down the country, and they're going to do that in February, and it's not going to be for 4 to 6 weeks. It's going to be for months.
That's if he gets in.
If he gets in, yes. I mean, what they're really doing is all you have to do is look at what these people are up to, and it's coming out of the World Economic Forum with George Soros and Bill Gates. It's the merger of all three of them. And I put on our site, Klaus Schwab's own video saying, his 8 predictions for 2030, you will own nothing and you'll be happy. Why will you be happy? Because basically their idea is to strip everybody of all property, period. That's communism. And then you're going to be giving this guaranteed basic income. And if you don't do what the government tells you to do, like get a vaccine or whatever, then your guaranteed basic income will be suspended. And how are you going to eat? This is what they're doing. It's the small businesses. If you look closely, the Democrats didn't want to bail out any small businesses. And that was before. Okay, why? They are the bourgeoisie in Marxism. All right. And if you eliminate the small businesses, which another lockdown is going to do, you're going to have serious unemployment because they employ 70% of the population. So what are you going to do? I mean, these people are out to really change everything. And as you know, I've been consulting with probably more governments than anybody, I think. I've been back and forth with central banks from everywhere from China to, Europe, Middle East, whatever. So, and I've been going back and forth to Europe on this issue for 4 years. And I've been telling them that, look, the real problem is they have lowered interest rates in Europe to negative in 2014. After 6 years, they have been unable to stimulate the economy. But they're now trapped. They can't sell debt at negative levels. Pension funds are basically on the brink of complete insolvency in Europe. Over 50% of them are basically broke already in Germany. And so I've been arguing that, look, at least convert the debt to a perpetual debt, raise the interest rate to at least 3%. But my solution is we keep our freedom, and it's government that has to give up some power. They don't want that. So they're turning to Schwab. And his solution is with Thomas Piketty. And if you look at it, it's basically Pickety's number one, pet peeve is communism, basically to take all assets away from everybody. And this is what he's doing. I mean, it was the French that convinced, Marx that socialism wasn't good enough and he had to go to communism, which was their experiment from the French Revolution. So you have to, see what's happening here. And these people are looking at if they um, eliminate all debt. All right. So there goes your pension funds. The government no longer has to pay off the debt, doesn't have to keep rolling it, because that is the real problem. They're at the end of the rope on that. So the only way out that they're seeing from Schwab is basically to default, and that's communism. You will own nothing and you'll be happy. So all debt will disappear, and all your personal private debts all disappear. In the backdrop to that, so do banks. This is why you have big tech supporting them. Because why? Twitter, all right, what's he got? He has Square. Facebook, what are they doing? They've been trying to put together their own currency. All right. These guys have been, dangling out in front of them. They're going to get a piece of action on every transaction in the world. And if the government tried censoring YouTube and Twitter, if they've been, actually doing what these guys have been doing, that's a complete violation of the Constitution. It's a violation of our civil rights. They stand up and say, "Oh, well, we're not the government. We're allowed to do whatever we want." And so this is the problem, that we have. I mean, they're violating our civil rights on every which level, from Sunday, and you'll have nothing left. And if you go to our site and look at that prediction from Schwab, what else does he have in there? The United States will no longer be a superpower. It will be shared among nations. In other words, that this is Soros's, open society. Only the United Nations will be the supreme government. And so what you have are politicians handing this because they feel that the system's broke, Keynesian economics has failed, and their only way to retain power is go authoritarian. I mean, I've also published internal memos from Germany. They're already, proposing to, suspend their elections in August. So in other words, you're going to see there's no way possible this contrived pandemic is going to disappear. Mask, social distancing, this is to prevent civil unrest. I mean, I've got a box of masks, and I bought from, right here from Amazon. And what's it say on there is that they do not prevent disease. So why are people being beaten, thrown in prison if you don't have a mask? Right on the box it says that it will not work. So, I mean, you have to really wonder what is going on here. I mean, and it's really a takeover, and it is, I call it Communism 3.0.
Do you think Trump can win? He's acting like he can win, and he says he's going to. Do you think he
Look,
can win? And if he does, what happens?
look, I think either way, we're going to end up in some sort of a civil war. It's clear, and it will probably split south and middle of the country against the New England versus and the West. I mean, these people are the communists basically, and this is what's going on. I mean, they're using the virus and climate change as the justification to do this. They erected a clock. I mean, I've shown the picture. You're probably seeing it on many different areas, but there's a clock across, from Times Square. And basically it says we got 7 years left. That's it. I mean, they're using all of this to basically really change everything that we have. And, um, you know, Klaus Schwab calls it the fourth, industrial revolution. The problem is that nobody ever created the first three. All right. It's society that creates it. It's no government sat down and said, oh, okay, fine. We need an industrial revolution. This is how we do it. It is always been the average person. And this is why communism fails. It rejects human um, rights and ingenuity. All advancement comes from people, not from government. All right. I mean, even Einstein said, always imagine. Because if you don't imagine, you can't create. And this is why communism fails. And I call it 3.0 because this is the third time it's being attempted. 1848, 1917 with the Russian and then the Chinese revolutions. And now we're right back. This is, 3.0. I mean, you would think that they would get over this nonsense. But again, this is Thomas Piketty, and you know, oh, the big problem is inequality of wealth. Go to any college and go to a student that works hard, gets an A, all right, and say, well, gee, it's not fair that you have an A and somebody else has an F. They flunked. So we're going to take points from you, so you're only going to get a C, and give them to the person that has an F, and now he'll be a C. Okay, now let's say this is medical school. You need a heart transplant. Do you want the one that had the F, or do you want the one that really had the A?
Good point.
This is human nature. Come on, you can't change it like this.
Well, let's say I'm trying to get you back into this Trump thing because that's the most prescient thing right now. I think he's going to win, and you're probably predicting lots of violence if he does. The mainstream media should be strung up for calling this for Biden when there's no certification whatsoever, and the fraud is off the charts. You know it, your computer knows it, and everybody else knows it too. So let's say Trump pulls it off and wins. I think he will. What happens?
Well, either way, it doesn't matter if he doesn't win. We're still going to have this violence. Neither side is going to accept a loss. Period. Unfortunately, this is what the computer's been projecting. That we're going to be looking at rising civil unrest, these lockdowns that are in Europe, which are really, really hard and draconian. You're going to see revolutions unfold. People are going to rise up against this. And I mean, down here in Florida, it was a Republican state. I would say at worst, maybe 5% of some of the small businesses went out. You go up to Manhattan. I mean, it looks like a ghost town.
Yeah.
A friend of mine sent me videos. He walked around London. I mean, it almost brought tears to my eyes. I lived in London. It was great. All these little shops. There was still somebody that made, a briefcase by hand. All this, which was handed down for generations. It's gone. And that was at least a third were finished. And he showed me. I used to go to Covent Garden on the weekends. A third of the shops were closed before. Now with this new lockdown, the rest of them are gone. That's it.
That's what they want.
And what are you going to have? This is never going back to normal. Never. They have no intention of going back to normal. They will keep the masks even though they don't work, and social distancing. And it's been this, is how they control people. This is exactly what the Stasi did in East Germany. And I went behind the Berlin Wall with a friend who's, the day the wall went up, he was walking on the right side of the street with his grandmother, who was like about 7 years old. And the rest of his family was trapped. So I went to East Germany with him to see his family. I said, "Yeah, I want to see what this is really about." So I actually went through Checkpoint Charlie and saw it. And his cousin, she would if anybody was remotely close to us, she would say, "Oh, it's this is our Philip Buer. They take such wonderful care of us. They're so great." And as soon as and nobody was around, she'd call them, "Oh, that sob, or starving here, etc." And this is what's happening. Um, they've destroyed food production. I mean, we're going to have food shortages and starvation, which is already starting in Africa. Uh, there's a run on paper products again. So I mean, I suggest people stockpile at least minute rice and pasta. That stuff lasts for years. But this is what's going on. I mean, and I don't think no matter what happens, Trump wins, you're going to have these people that are far left, and they don't care. They'll say, "Oh, Trump stole it." And no matter what evidence you show them, they will reject it. I think even Julius Caesar said a long time ago, he says people believe only what they want to believe, and that's very true.
What happens to the markets, bonds, gold? I know that the 10-year Treasury was floating around 0.6%, and then all of a sudden it floated up to 0.9 something percent. Not a big change in terms of it's still less than a percent, but a big percentage change.
Yes,
Could
percentage is big.
So what's going on with the? Let's start with the 10-year Treasury. I mean, they set mortgage rates off the 10-year. Should be the 30-year. I don't know. It just seems like, but I know they do the 10-year. What's going on with interest rates? Could the 10-year float up to 1.5, 2%, and people who bought this junk at 0.6% could get wiped out?
Oh yeah, no. Look, this is stay away from government debt. Period. Um, it's just stay completely far away from it as you possibly can. Corporate debt, all right, fine, but interest rates are going up. And that's what this crisis really is about and why they're being so aggressive on this. Government debt is going to be, they continue to follow Schwab. They're just going to outright default. That's it. Um, I was at least suggesting a perpetual bond, but kind of like the old British consols, where you continue to get interest, until they decide to redeem them, if ever. But um, we're at a stage here that government is completely collapsing. I've been warning people that socialism is collapsing, and they all know, no, it's capitalism. And no, it's socialism, because they can't afford the pension funds. They can't afford all the social benefits that they have promised and continue to borrow without ever repaying anybody. So that's what's coming to an end. So the only way to keep those socialistic programs going is basically adopting this modern monetary theory where they're just not going to issue debt anymore. They're just going to print money.
Wow. What does that mean for? Let's go to what does that mean for gold and silver? I know you're not a big proponent of it, but you have to consider it. I mean, if you're going to get to this kind of a situation,
No.
what do you think?
I still think that you want like silver coins, like
Ah,
the quarters and stuff like that. Um, my only concern about the gold is that these people are ruthless. They've already been tracking gold. It's taxed, for example, in France. I know people that uh, my friends there. They have it. They buy gold and they ship it to Belgium just to prevent the taxes on it. Um, they're tracking virtually everybody that produces gold. Period. So it's kind of also like the cryptocurrencies. I mean, do you really think if these people are doing what they're doing with the elections and they're going to default and all this stuff, do you really think they're going to try and allow people to have any alternative? They're going after, cryptocurrencies. They're going after gold in the sense that you can't travel with it anymore. There was a woman that came from Canada down to San Francisco, and she had $30,000 in gold, and they confiscated it from her. So, there was even a guy from Tampa that flew internally, not internationally, and he had a couple 100,000 in cash on him to go buy some tractors, and they confiscated that. So they're just into whatever you have, let's just seize it, and you got to be careful about that. So with gold, yes, I think it's going to go up. It will be a store of wealth for this type of crisis. It's a collapse in confidence in government that is necessary to make it rise. But be careful. Do not store it in a bank. Do not store it in any storage facility. Maybe you got to dig a hole in the back, in the backyard. But because if you look at 1930, when Roosevelt confiscated gold, if you had gold on deposit in a bank, it was gone. They did not come down and knock on every door and ask you, hey, you got any gold? Turn it over. That they didn't do. So we have to understand that this is what we're looking at this stage in the game. So they would not be someone who would be really looking at anything on the side of, I would say, ethics or anything like that. So just be mindful that if you had it in a storage facility, they know where those are. And they may do the same thing they did in the 30s. Hey, that's all ours.
You like gold, you don't like the vicious assault against it by the people who are doing the crap to us now.
Right. I mean, that's my concern.
Got it. Right? Not gold. You're not concerned about gold. You're concerned about the people that will steal your gold.
Yes. I mean, I'm just saying you've got to be careful where you store this stuff at. For right now, the other thing that will probably still survive will be the equity side. And if you noticed in this last little rally, suddenly the Dow made a new high and the NASDAQ declined. It's a little bit more than Bezos selling off $3 billion of his own stock. They basically were looking at this, and when the Dow goes up, that's international capital starting to park. So if you can't trust the banks, you can't trust the government debt, where are you going to put the money?
Stocks.
And the best thing, you can put it in some, stocks and at least travel with it. So far. I mean, that maybe diamonds you can, that won't be picked up by one of these X-ray machines. But I think that other than that, and we're just getting into this situation where it is a war against us, period. And I hope Trump wins because, it's more along the lines of he's our last defense against some of these people. And that's why they've been trying to steal the election. He's against the climate change. Biden said he will rejoin the UN. That is exactly what they want. All right. If you look at Schwab, U.S. will no longer be a superpower. All right. It will be shared among nations coming out of the UN. And he's got this right in the video. Soros has been anti-American for a long time.
And your book was held. I want to come back here. Your publisher, we plugged a book last time you were on. You said they held it. I said, why did they hold it? Talk about that.
I finally got one copy they at least sent me. Here you go.
That's right. This has not been sold yet, so this is for sale now, correct? There's a story behind it.
I think because on the cover it has Gates and Soros. This was ready in May, and I got this copy the day of the election.
And this is now on your site now, so I can link to it anew, and hopefully, and I don't get anything for this, folks. We're not in business, me and Martin Armstrong. I like him, but I have him on because he's smart. He doesn't pay me. but I can link to this book, and you will be able to sell it anew. Finally, after months, you'll be able to sell this book. Is that correct?
Well, we have it on our site digital. I put it up as digital because they were withholding it.
Oh, well, I'm going to link to the digital copy of it and link to your site. And also and I want to kind of wrap this up. You've been a fantastic guest. I mean, wow, my head's about to explode. I know your computer does a lot, but you're a very smart guy. But I want to talk about your conference, December 4th and 5th in Orlando. It's the World Economic Conference. Will you tell me about that a little bit?
Um, yeah, usually we have clients flying in from around the world for it. I mean, this year we won't be able to. It'll probably just be Americans, some Europeans who are here.
Online? You got to put it online too?
We're doing a virtual online
Yeah.
around the world. We capped that at 25,000 attendees because I'm just concerned it would be too much. But we have clients in absolutely every country around the world. I mean, so it's the computer does forecast everything from Romania to India. So I mean the fact that this is a computer that's writing these reports is so significant because it's not subject to a personal opinion. Anytime I thought something might happen or wouldn't happen, I'm the one that's wrong and the computer's the one that's right. And I mean, just on this election and saying that, forecasting that this would be the most corrupt election in American history.
Wow.
I mean, I published that 2 years ago. This is what the computer's saying. All right. This is beyond what I would have personally expected.
Is the media ever going to recover from this? I mean, they are in full psyop mode. I mean, there's no journalism whatsoever with this. The media. I mean, I think Fox is already getting pounded. People like Newsmax have jumped up fivefold. One American News, another Fox competitor, jumping up, and then Fox is getting creamed by their own people and by the lefties that hate them anyway. Is the mainstream media ever going to come back from this after it's discovered this massive fraud is totally revealed, and Trump does win? Are they ever going to be able to come back from it?
I don't think so. I mean, in all honesty, I have some journalists that are friends of mine at some of the major newspapers, and they've been telling me they were told from above there'll be no stories on fraud. They're no longer journalists anymore. Many of them are realizing they're just becoming propaganda agents. That's it. They're not allowed to do any story that the editor doesn't want to publish. So Greenwald, basically, even the company that he helped fund and founded from the beginning,
The Intercept,
he left. This is getting to be really, really serious. I mean, the press has been sold this bill of goods, and I published on our site. You can also look at. I mean, just search Durante, and it will come right up. The New York Times was putting out fake news during the 1930s, and they were supporting Stalin. And saying that, oh, he's a fantastic leader, and the United States should be following Stalin. And they've always been communistic. This is outrageous. There's a movie I recommend watching. It's called Mr. Jones. It's all about that New York Times attempt to hide the truth. And the reason communism fails is, I said, it's human nature, and they seized all the farms. It's the farmer who knows when to plant, and he has a feeling for things. So all that was usurped, and that went to the government. So what happened was the crops completely failed, and people were starving. So then he stole all the food from Ukraine. 7 million people died of starvation down there. took the food up to Russia so he could pretend that communism was working. And the New York Times knew this and was hiding it.
Uh,
So the movie, Mr. Jones, is very, very good, and it shows you the danger of fake news. And here they are once again doing the same stuff, promoting this great reset, and it's communism. And they may think it's just, oh, we're it's this is good, this is what we have to do for the climate. Well, they're going to find out they are selling out not just themselves, their families, and all posterity.
Martin Armstrong, you're ArmstrongEconomics.com, right? ArmstrongEconomics.com is the website.
Yes.
I'll put the site up. There's the site just moves over and moves over. But I will put up links to your conference, and I will put up links to your book as well. There's all kinds of other special articles and stuff you can buy. There's all kinds of free stuff on there as well. So go to Martin Armstrong, ArmstrongEconomics.com. Martin Armstrong, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com for a real eye opener. Thank you very much, sir.
Well, thank you for having me.